The Fearless Organization, by Amy C. Edmondson. Introduction. It was February 1, 2003. 16 days into its mission, the Space Shuttle Columbia was hurtling back towards Earth, a fiery angel streaking across the morning sky. On the ground, NASA engineers watched their monitors, their hearts filled with that familiar mix of pride and anxiety that comes at the end of every mission. But for one engineer, Rodney Roca, that anxiety was different. It was sharper. A little heavier. You see, 2 weeks earlier, just after the launch, Roca had been reviewing the video footage. And he saw something. A small, grainy dot breaking away from the shuttle's external tank and striking the left wing. He played the tape again. And again. It was impossible to know for sure if any damage had been done, but a cold knot of worry tightened in his stomach. He knew what he needed to do. He had to get clearer pictures. He needed NASA to ask the Department of Defense to use their powerful spy satellites to take a look at Columbia's wing in orbit. He emailed his boss. His boss thought it was unnecessary. Discouraged, Roca felt a door close. Later, when senior managers met to discuss the mission, the possibility of a foam strike was brought up, and then quickly dismissed. Roca sat on the edge of the room, silent. He was, in his own words, too low down on the ladder. The mission manager was way up here. He felt, quite literally, that he couldn't speak. On that February morning, as Columbia re-entered the atmosphere, superheated gases breached the damaged left wing. The shuttle broke apart, taking with it the lives of all 7 astronauts on board. This story isn't just a tragedy. It's a warning. It's a quiet, devastating illustration of a force that shapes our world in ways we rarely see. It's the invisible hand of fear that holds back our best ideas, our crucial warnings, and our greatest potential. What if I told you that this same force, the one that kept a brilliant engineer silent, is at play in your school, in the companies you admire, and maybe even in your own home? Today, we're going to explore a book that pulls back the curtain on this hidden dynamic. It's called The Fearless Organization, by Harvard Business School professor Amy C. Edmondson. For over 20 years, she has dedicated her life to understanding one of the most powerful, yet overlooked ingredients for success in any group, something she calls psychological safety. By the end of our time together, you will understand not just what psychological safety is, but why it is the single most important factor that separates high-performing teams from the rest. You'll see how its absence has led to some of the biggest business disasters of our time, and how its presence has fueled the genius of companies like Pixar and Google. More importantly, you'll walk away with a clear blueprint for how to start building it, right now, wherever you are. Because creating a fearless environment isn't a job just for CEOs, it's a job for all of us. Book summary. Think about the last time you were in a classroom or a group meeting and you had a question, but you didn't ask it. Why not? Maybe you thought it was a stupid question, and you didn't want to look ignorant. Or perhaps you had an idea, a different way of doing things, but you stayed quiet. You didn't want to seem disruptive or step on anyone's toes. Maybe you saw a small mistake, something that wasn't quite right, but you let it go. You didn't want to be seen as negative or incompetent, pointing out someone else's error. If any of this sounds familiar, then you felt the quiet pressure of what Amy Edmondson calls interpersonal risk. It's a term that sounds a little academic, but it describes a feeling we all know intimately. From a very young age, we learn that what other people think of us matters. We learn to manage our image. We learn that it's safer to blend in than to stand out. No one wakes up in the morning and thinks, "I can't wait to go to work today and look foolish." It's just not how we're wired. So, we make thousands of tiny, unconscious calculations every single day. We weigh the potential benefit of speaking up against the immediate, personal risk of looking bad. And almost every time, the fear of looking bad wins. Edmondson tells a story about a young nurse practitioner named Christina, working in a neonatal intensive care unit. A set of premature twins had just been born. Christina knew that the new best practice was to give these high-risk babies a specific medicine to help their lungs develop. But the senior doctor, a man with a reputation for publicly scolding nurses who questioned him, hadn't ordered it. Christina stepped forward to say something. And then she stopped. She remembered him berating another nurse just last week. She told herself the doctor probably had a good reason. He was the expert, after all. He was already walking away, his white coat billowing behind him. The moment passed. She stayed silent. This is the voice silence calculation in action. The potential benefit, helping the babies, was uncertain and in the future. The personal cost, being humiliated by the doctor, was certain and immediate. Our brains, Edmondson explains, are wired to discount the future and overweight the present. So, Christina, like most of us, chose the path of personal safety. In this case, thankfully, the babies were fine. But what happens when this small, silent act of self-preservation is repeated by thousands of people, day after day, in organizations where the stakes are incredibly high? The result is a silent epidemic. It's an epidemic of missed opportunities, of uncorrected errors, and of untapped potential. And sometimes, it leads to absolute disaster. This brings us to one of the most infamous business scandals of the 21st century, Volkswagen's Dieselgate. In 2015, Volkswagen was on top of the world. They were the largest automaker on the planet, a titan of German engineering. Their clean diesel cars were winning environmental awards. They had set an audacious goal, to triple their sales in the United States and dominate the global market. There was just one tiny problem. Their clean diesel technology was a lie. The company's leaders had given their engineers an impossible task: build a diesel engine that was powerful, fuel-efficient, and met the incredibly strict U.S. emissions standards. The engineers knew it couldn't be done. At least, not with the technology they had. Now, imagine being one of those engineers. Your CEO, Martin Winterkorn, is a notorious perfectionist, a man known for his explosive temper. His mentor, the legendary chairman Ferdinand Piëch, once told a group of engineers they had 6 weeks to achieve world-class results, adding, "I have all your names. If we do not have good body fits in 6 weeks, I will replace all of you." This was not a culture where you could raise your hand and say, "I'm sorry, sir, but what you're asking is impossible." To do so would have been career suicide. It was a culture ruled by fear. So, faced with an impossible goal and a culture of terror, the engineers made a fateful choice. They didn't push back. They cheated. They wrote millions of lines of sophisticated software code, a defeat device, that could tell when a car was being tested in a lab. During the test, the engine would run clean, passing with flying colors. But as soon as the car was back on the open road, the software would switch off the emissions controls, and the engine would spew toxic pollutants into the air at up to 40 times the legal limit. For nearly a decade, it worked. Volkswagen sales soared. They achieved their goal years ahead of schedule. But they had built a fortress on a foundation of lies. And eventually, a small, independent group of researchers discovered the truth. The fallout was catastrophic. The company's value plummeted by a third. The CEO resigned. Executives were suspended. The company paid out tens of billions of dollars in fines. A 78-year-old reputation for engineering excellence was shattered overnight. After the scandal broke, one of the company's labor representatives wrote a letter to the staff. He said, "We need in the future a climate in which problems aren't hidden but can be openly communicated to superiors." We need a culture in which it's possible and permissible to argue with your superior about the best way to go. He was, without knowing it, calling for psychological safety. Volkswagen's story is a dramatic one, but the script is tragically common. We see it again at Wells Fargo, the American banking giant. Leaders set an outrageously ambitious sales goal they called going for GR8, meaning every customer should have 8 different products with the bank. Branch employees knew this was unrealistic. There's a limit to how many bank accounts and credit cards a single family needs. But the pressure was immense. Daily sales quotas, constant monitoring, and the threat of being fired loomed over everyone. So, just like the engineers at VW, they found a way to hit the numbers. They created millions of fake bank accounts and credit cards without customers' knowledge. They forged signatures. They lied. And for years, the company was celebrated as a king of cross-sell. It was another illusion of success, built on a culture of fear. When the truth finally came out, over 5,000 employees had been fired for ethics violations, and the bank faced over $185 million in fines, its reputation in tatters. In both these stories, leaders mistook setting high standards for good management. They believed that fear was an effective motivator. And what they got, as Edmondson points out, was a spectacular illusion of success that was doomed to explode. They created environments where it was easier for employees to cheat than to tell the truth. But the cost of silence isn't just financial. Sometimes, it's measured in human lives. Let's travel back to 1977, to a foggy runway on the small island of Tenerife. It's the scene of the deadliest accident in aviation history. 2 fully loaded Boeing 747 jumbo jets collided, and 583 people perished. The investigation that followed uncovered a chain of unfortunate events: the fog, a crowded airport, a bomb scare earlier in the day. But the critical failure happened inside the cockpit of one of the planes. The captain, Jacob Van Zanten, was a legend at his airline. He was their chief flight instructor, the face of their advertising campaigns. He was, in a word, intimidating. His co-pilot and flight engineer were both highly experienced, but they were his juniors. And in the strict hierarchy of the 1970s cockpit, the captain's word was law. Anxious to get going, the captain began to accelerate for takeoff, even though they hadn't received explicit clearance from air traffic control. The co-pilot, Klaus Moore, hesitantly suggested they still needed clearance. The captain, irritated, brushed him off. A moment later, a garbled transmission came through. The flight engineer, Willem Scruter, heard something that made him worry the other jumbo jet was still on the runway. He voiced his concern, asking, "Is he not clear, that Pan American?" Captain Van Zanten replied with absolute confidence, "Oh, yes." And in that moment, both the co-pilot and the flight engineer fell silent. They had a seed of doubt, a crucial piece of the puzzle that the captain was missing. But they were facing Mr. KLM. They were facing a man who had literally certified their ability to fly. The interpersonal risk of challenging him felt immense. Their instinct for self-preservation, the fear of angering their superior, overrode their training, their judgment, and even their own survival instincts. Seconds later, their plane slammed into the other jet, creating a massive fireball. The Tenerife disaster became a turning point in aviation. It led to the creation of something called Crew Resource Management, or CRM, a new way of training that completely redesigned the culture of the cockpit. It was designed to do one thing: make it safe for a junior officer to challenge a senior captain. It was designed to build psychological safety. This brings us to the core of Amy Edmondson's work. Psychological safety isn't about being nice. It's not about lowering standards or avoiding accountability. It's a belief, shared by a team, that it is safe to take interpersonal risks. It's the belief that you won't be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. Edmondson presents a simple but powerful model to help us understand this. Imagine a graph. On one axis, you have performance standards, from low to high. On the other, you have psychological safety, also from low to high. This creates 4 zones. When both standards and safety are low, you're in the apathy zone. People just show up, do the bare minimum, and go home. There's no passion, no energy. When standards are low but safety is high, you're in the comfort zone. It's a pleasant place to work. Everyone is friendly, but nobody is challenged. There's not much learning or innovation happening. Now, here's the dangerous one. When standards are high but safety is low, you enter the anxiety zone. This is the world of Volkswagen and Wells Fargo. People are under immense pressure to perform, but they are terrified of failing or speaking up. This zone leads to corner cutting, cheating, and burnout. It looks productive for a while, but it's a recipe for disaster. But when you have both high performance standards and high psychological safety, you create the most powerful environment of all, the learning zone. This is also the high performance zone. It's an environment where people are motivated to do their best work, and they feel safe enough to take the risks necessary to learn, innovate, and achieve excellence. So, the question becomes, what does this learning zone actually look like? Let's take a trip to one of the most creative companies on the planet, Pixar Animation Studios. Pixar has produced 19 feature films, and every single one has been a critical and commercial hit. In an industry where success is rare and unpredictable, this track record is nothing short of miraculous. How do they do it? According to co-founder Ed Catmull, one of the secrets is a process they call the Brain Trust. The Brain Trust is a small group of directors and storytellers who meet every few months to review a film in progress. Their job is to provide completely honest, candid feedback. And the core ingredient, the one thing that makes it all work, is psychological safety. Catmull is famously blunt about their process. He says, "Early on, all of our movies suck." Think about that. The creative geniuses behind Toy Story, Finding Nemo, and Up start with something that is, in their own words, terrible. They know that the journey from a bad idea to a brilliant film is a messy, iterative process that relies on thousands of small corrections. And those corrections can only happen if people feel safe enough to tell the truth. The Brain Trust has a few simple rules. First, feedback is about the project, not the person. It's constructive, not personal. The filmmakers can't be defensive. Second, the feedback is a suggestion, not a command. The director is still in charge and can take or leave any advice. And third, the candor comes from a place of empathy. The people in the room want to help the film succeed. This process institutionalizes candor. It creates a space where it's not just okay to point out flaws, it's expected. It's your job. It reframes criticism not as an attack, but as a gift that helps make the final product better. Another crucial ingredient at Pixar is their attitude toward failure. They understand that you can't be innovative without it. As Catmull says, if people are afraid to fail, they will seek instead to repeat something safe that's been good enough in the past. Their work will be derivative, not innovative. They uncouple fear from failure. They know that learning to make a great movie is like learning to ride a bike. You're going to fall a few times. The scraped knees are part of the process. This embrace of intelligent failure is also at the heart of another, very different, high-performing organization, Google X, the company's moonshot factory. At X, their mission is to invent radical, world-changing technologies. They work on projects like self-driving cars and energy-generating kites. By definition, their work is incredibly risky, and most of their projects are destined to fail. So how do they get brilliant people to work on things that will probably not succeed? Astro Teller, the captain of moonshots at X, says they make it safe to fail. They don't just tolerate failure, they celebrate and reward it. When a team proves that their moonshot idea won't work and decides to kill the project, they don't get punished. They get applause. They get high fives and hugs from their managers. They get promoted. Every single person on a team that ends its project receives a bonus. This might sound crazy, but the logic is brilliant. It's far cheaper to kill a bad idea early than to let it consume resources for years. By rewarding teams for finding the truth quickly, even if that truth is "this won't work," they create an incentive to tackle the hardest, riskiest parts of a problem first. They are not pro-failure, Teller explains. They are pro-learning. Real failure, in their eyes, is trying something, learning it doesn't work, then continuing to do it anyway. Perhaps the most famous discovery related to psychological safety comes from Google itself. For years, the company was obsessed with the question, what makes a perfect team? They launched a massive internal study called Project Aristotle, analyzing hundreds of teams and mountains of data. They looked at everything. Did it matter if teammates were friends outside of work? Was it better to have teams of all introverts or all extroverts? Did the educational backgrounds of team members matter? Nothing. They couldn't find any patterns. The smartest people didn't necessarily form the best teams. It was a complete mystery. And then, as one of the researchers said, they encountered the concept of psychological safety in academic papers, and it was as if everything suddenly fell into place. They discovered that psychological safety was far and away the most important of the 5 dynamics they found. It was the underpinning of everything else. It didn't matter who was on the team. What mattered was how they treated each other. On the best teams, members felt safe to be vulnerable, to admit mistakes, and to take risks without fear of being judged. So, this all sounds wonderful. But how do you actually build it? How does a leader, at any level, start to create a fearless organization? Amy Edmondson argues it's not magic. It's a set of deliberate, repeatable leadership actions. She breaks it down into a simple, 3-part toolkit. First, you have to set the stage. This starts with framing the work. A leader has to constantly remind people of the nature of their work. If the work is complex, uncertain, and interdependent, which describes most knowledge work today, then you need to be explicit about it. You need to say things like, "We've never done this before, so we're going to have to learn as we go," or "This project requires all of our expertise, so I need to hear from every one of you." This simple act of framing does 2 things. It creates a shared understanding of the challenge, and it gives people a rational reason why their voice is necessary. It's not just welcome, it's required for success. Setting the stage also means reframing failure. As we saw at Pixar and Google X, leaders must help people see failure not as a sign of incompetence, but as an essential part of the learning process. You have to distinguish between different types of failure. A preventable failure from sloppiness is different from an intelligent failure that comes from a thoughtful experiment in new territory. And finally, you set the stage by emphasizing purpose. Leaders need to connect the daily work to a larger, meaningful mission. Why does this work matter? Who are we helping? When people feel that their work has purpose, it puts the small interpersonal risks of speaking up into perspective. The fear of letting down a customer or a patient becomes greater than the fear of looking bad in front of a colleague. The second part of the toolkit is to invite participation. It's not enough to just say, "My door is always open." A leader has to be proactive. This involves 2 key behaviors: situational humility and proactive inquiry. Situational humility is simply recognizing that you don't have all the answers. It's being willing to say, "I don't know," or I need your help. When a leader admits their own fallibility, it creates space for others to be human, too. It makes them feel safe to admit their own uncertainties and mistakes. As Anne Mulcahy, the former CEO who saved Xerox from bankruptcy, said, "Instead of people losing confidence, they actually gain confidence in you when you admit you don't know something." Proactive inquiry means actively asking good questions. Not questions where you already know the answer, but genuine, curiosity-driven questions. Questions like, "What are you up against? What are your concerns? Or what might we be missing?" A good question is a powerful tool. It creates a vacuum that only a voice can fill. It signals, "I value your perspective." You can also invite participation by creating structures and processes for input. Think of Pixar's Brain Trust or the listening sessions at Barry Weckmiller, a manufacturing company that dramatically turned its culture around by truly caring for its people. These formal structures make it clear that input isn't just welcome, it's a required part of the process. Finally, the third, and perhaps most crucial, part of the toolkit is to respond productively. How a leader reacts in the moment someone speaks up is everything. If you invite people to share bad news, and then you shoot the messenger, all the psychological safety you've built will evaporate in an instant. A productive response has 3 elements. First, you express appreciation. A simple "thank you for bringing that up" is incredibly powerful. It doesn't matter if the idea is good or bad. You are thanking them for the act of speaking up, for taking the risk. This small reward reinforces the behavior. Second, you destigmatize failure. When someone brings you news of a failure or a mistake, you have to look forward, not backward. The conversation should be about learning, not blaming. Your focus should be on, what can we learn from this? And how can we do better next time? And third, this might sound counterintuitive, but you must sanction clear violations. Psychological safety doesn't mean there are no consequences. If someone is repeatedly careless, behaves unethically, or violates the core values of the team, they must be held accountable. Failing to do so doesn't increase psychological safety, it erodes it. It tells the rest of the team that the rules don't matter, which makes the environment feel unpredictable and unsafe. A fair, consistent response to a clear violation actually reinforces the safety of the group. What becomes clear is that building a fearless organization is not a one-time event. It's a continuous, dynamic process. It's like sailing a boat upwind. You can't point directly at your destination. You have to tack left, then right, making constant small adjustments to the sails and the rudder in response to the shifting winds. You try asking a powerful question. You admit a mistake. You thank someone for a crazy idea. Each action is a small tack, a slight course correction that, over time, moves the entire organization closer to its goal. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to be the CEO to do this. Anyone can ask a good question. Anyone can listen with curiosity. Anyone can admit they need help. Every time you do, you are exercising leadership. You are making the space around you just a little bit safer for others to bring their full selves to work. Ultimately, the journey to a fearless organization is a choice. It's the choice to play to win, not just to play not to lose. It's the choice to prioritize learning over knowing, and to embrace candor over the illusion of comfort. It's a choice that requires courage, humility, and a deep belief in the untapped potential that lies dormant in every single person, just waiting for a safe space to emerge. Commentary. As we wrap up our journey through the fearless organization, I want to take a moment to reflect on why this idea is so profoundly important, especially right now. We live in a world of constant change. The challenges we face, in business, in science, in our communities, are more complex and uncertain than ever before. In a world like this, the old model of leadership, the top-down, command and control style we saw at Volkswagen, is not just ineffective, it's dangerous. No single person, no matter how brilliant, can have all the answers. The solutions to our biggest problems are not locked away in the mind of a lone genius. They are distributed, fragmented across the minds and experiences of everyone in an organization. The genius of today is not in having the best ideas, but in creating an environment where the best ideas can emerge, be tested, and be refined. Amy Edmondson's work gives us the language and the framework to understand this. She makes it clear that psychological safety is not a soft, nice-to-have perk. It is a strategic imperative. It's the bedrock upon which all learning, innovation, and growth are built. What strikes me most about this book is its fundamental optimism about human potential. It operates on the belief that people don't come to work wanting to do a bad job. They don't want to hide mistakes or hold back good ideas. They do so because the environment has taught them that it's safer to be silent. The fearless organization, then, is not about fixing people. It's about removing the barriers that prevent them from being their best selves. If there's one simple action you can take away from this today, let it be this: start with curiosity. The next time you're in a conversation, resist the urge to state your own opinion first. Instead, ask a genuine question. Something as simple as, "What's your perspective on this?" or "Help me understand what you're seeing." Then, listen. Truly listen. You might be amazed at what you learn, and you'll be taking the first small, powerful step toward building a more fearless environment around you. Another powerful action is to reframe how you talk about mistakes. The next time you or someone on your team makes a mistake, try saying, "That's interesting. What can we learn from this?" Shifting the focus from blame to learning is a game changer. It transforms a moment of fear into a moment of growth. That was our deep dive into The Fearless Organization by Amy C. Edmondson. We've explored the core ideas and the powerful stories that bring them to life. But I want to be honest with you, a summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. It can show you the major cities and the rivers, but it can never replace the experience of actually walking the streets, hearing the music, and talking to the people. If any of the stories or ideas we discussed today sparked something in you, I urge you to pick up a copy of the book. Reading it is an experience, one that will give you the tools and the inspiration to fundamentally change the way you lead and interact with others. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. And finally, if you found this journey valuable and want to continue exploring the ideas that shape the world's most successful people, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It lets us know we're on the right track and ensures you won't miss our next adventure into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.